Hey guys, I am Amy Cornell. I'm your Texas broker and I'm here to help you real estate better. So wanted to do a video today to kind of encompass all of those special properties that you may show as a buyer rep that you may not know how do these work. They all have a few little interesting nuances on it. This obviously will not be an all-encompassing cover everything, but it is going to cover those that you fall, even though they're special, you fall into them more routinely. So I wanted to pop over to my PowerPoint just so that I make sure that I don't forget anything to tell you. All right, so first let's talk with new construction. So I have new agents all the time that are like, oh my gosh, I have a client that wants new construction. I just don't know how to help them. Well, first off, there are a lot of classes on this. And so I would encourage you to check out some of the certifications that are available with new homes because they can really help you dig into different construction methods and how to build rapport with builders and how to get more business. There are some great classes out there for this. But barring that, you've got a client that wants to go see new construction. How do you do that? Well, first off, a lot of consumers don't know that they can bring a real estate agent with them to be their representation in the transaction. And so make sure that you're telling your clients first off, don't feel like you can go or don't feel like you need to go into the builders alone. I'm here to help. That pricing is built into their pricing, and so you can have me come with you and really help facilitate in the transaction. Make sure that you're getting the best deal possible. When you do that, then you will have some responsibility, right, to figure out which builders they should be going and seeing, what fits within their overall model, what neighborhoods, those kind of things. So need to do some research, right? And so we would normally go out to MLS and do our virtual searching. Well, for new construction, not everything is listed on MLS. Sometimes it is, but oftentimes we see that maybe a house in a neighborhood is posted on MLS, but that house might have already sold, or it might be coming in another 6 months, but it's not actually what is available on the ground. So really creating relationships with the builder reps in the neighborhoods that you're interested in viewing is the best way to find out about those properties. I know that seems like a lot of legwork, but let me tell you, you're doing a lot of legwork up front. You are getting paid a whole lot on the back. So do the legwork. It's just one of those things that you just need to do to get that done. So I will tell you, they're not always on MLS. You also need to make sure that you register the client with the builder. So very often the builder will ask for you to start your tour in their model. So if you're looking at several homes in their subdivision, they want you to come to the model and register the buyer. There is normally a page, I don't know, for some reason it always seems to be like on a half piece of paper where they want your buyer's information. So they want names, they want phone numbers, they want email addresses, and they want your name and your brokerage as well. It's just kind of the game that they play. They're the ones with the properties. They're the ones making the rules on new construction. I would comply. So I want to go ahead and register my buyer. If I have a buyer who is considering going out and looking at a neighborhood this weekend and I may not be available or they may not want me to come with them on their first trip, I'm going to call and talk with that builder rep, explain that situation, and ask if I can register them in advance. So best case scenario, you're walking hand in hand into that model to register, but if not, know that you can call and talk to the builder rep and just follow whatever rules they have set up. Every builder's a little different. So every builder's process is a little different. Everything is, I can't just say blanketly, oh, this is how they all work, because it just does depend on the individual builder. But just call and talk with them about it. Communicate. Say, hey, here's our situation. Call and say, hey, I have a client that's looking to build for $400,000. What could you do for that? Could you get them a 4-bedroom home? Could you get them, appliances too? Something like that. So a lot of times new construction seems too easy because the builder rep is the one who draws all the documents most of the time. If you're dealing with a production builder where they are in communities and they are building homes as part of their regular course of business, most of the time they will have had attorneys that prepare very lengthy documents that are to the benefit of the builder, really to help that builder CYA, right? They're covering themselves. They are not those same TREC forms that we're used to seeing that are very slighted towards the buyer. Okay. So they're also not documents that we can advise on as Texas real estate professionals because we are not trained on those. So we have to advise that they seek outside counsel for that. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll just go ahead and sign it as is. The other thing that you need to know is that when you're signing those forms, oftentimes earnest money is cut directly to the builder, not to the title company. And there's not an option period. So there's not really a cooling off period. It's once they sign and put in that earnest money, that contract is hard. Now it depends on when the actual builder signs. Do they have their rep sign? Do they have a builder contact sign? I mean, there are some things with that, but just know this isn't the same as having an option period and having some time. Like if you're putting money down, that money may be non-refundable starting immediately. Okay. Now that's the cool thing about new construction is you really can see what you can get. Well, that's if you're buying a spec house, right? If you're buying a build from ground up, I mean, you can't really see what you can get, right? But that is just part of it, is that they've got to kind of jump in with this builder, get into a relationship with them, and then get into the design center to get things worked out. We'll talk a lot more about new construction in another video, but that's just the basics of what you're looking for as far as finding the properties to get into new construction. Really, I have on here to just seek ways to show value to the client, the builder. Just look, how can you do without being adversarial during the process. I have so many builder reps that say, man, I have some agents that come in and they think they've got to win. They've got to figure out some way to get some great deal for their client. Well, maybe the great deal is, hey, you were able to actually connect them with that builder and they were able to get the home that they wanted. That sometimes is the deal. So it just depends on what the whole situation is, but just know that you don't need to be adversarial to be really a good representative for the buyer. All right, so that's new construction. You're gonna have to look at off MLS for those. What about for sale by owners or FSBOs? So you don't want to lose a client over a FSBO because a buyer might see, let's say a for sale by owner sign, and if they call you and say, hey, did you see that one on the corner of Forest Edge and Country Club? That it says for sale by owner, but man, that looks like that would be perfect for us. Well, in that situation, I want to say, let me do some research. I haven't seen it, but let me get some information and I will call you right back. I'm going to hang up the phone. I'm either going to go over there and look at the sign, or I'm going to, search online, try to find the sign. These are likely not going to be on MLS. It's going to be some sort of sign that somebody got at the hardware store, put in their yard saying, hey, let's go. Now it might be on a Make Me Move on Zillow, something like that, but sometimes that is some legwork to actually go and get the information on it. You also can be proactive and present these options to your buyer. They're going to love you even more for that. It just depends on how much, time and that kind of thing you have to do that, and really how lucky you are, because it would kind of be like finding a needle in a haystack. All right. So on for sale by owner, you need to negotiate the buyer agent commission before showing, or let the client know that they will need to compensate for some lack of commission in the offer. Some for sale by owners are just so not ready to pay any sort of commission that they just won't. And so if they are that person that says, you're welcome to bring me an offer, but I absolutely positively will not pay you, then that's where in the buyer rep it says you'll seek first commission from the seller, and if the seller refuses, then the buyer pays. Okay. The buyer knows that before they make the offer. So maybe they want to increase that amount in paragraph 12A1B that says that the seller will pay a certain amount of closing costs for them. Maybe that needs to be the commission. Maybe they need to write into special provisions to say, hey, seller, you have to pay a 3% commission or whatever percent commission to my agent, because I'm not gonna offer you this unless you pay this. Or maybe it's just that the buyer wants to reduce their offer by that amount so that they know, okay, I know I'm going to pay that. I know I'm going to pay it in cash. And so I'm going to reduce the offer to cover that. However y'all want to do that is totally fine. But just know there's not some magical BAC number that's protected out there. Okay, so, new construction, yes, I would say most of the time the builder will pay. I haven't really run into any situation where I haven't, as long as you follow the rules. FSBO, not on MLS, but not always going to get paid. So you just need to talk with the seller and then talk with your buyer about it. Keep in mind, when you're doing a for sale by owner, you're often doing double duty, because the seller will not have advocacy on their side to help with some of the more, what I would say, normal things, like maybe letting an appraiser into the house, or I don't know, putting it on MLS for disclosure purposes, those kind of things. There may be some extra things that you're doing because the seller just doesn't have access to it, and that's just part of it. But I would just say, just don't lose a buyer over not helping them on a for sale by owner, because that may be the right house for them. All right. Limited service agent. So this is actually kind of similar to a for sale by owner, but this will be on MLS. So I run into this from time to time where everything is on MLS just as it kind of should be, but in the private remarks or in the showing remarks, it says call seller for showing, and it has a phone number with their name, or call seller for all questions related to this property. Well, TREC says, hey, you should not be dealing directly with the other party if they are represented. You should be dealing with their agent. The problem is there are companies out there that have set up agency agreements with these sellers that say, hey, I'm only going to take a teeny amount, and then you're going to deal directly with the buyer's agent. They are totally okay with that system. It's just that TREC is not really. So here's what I do. Rather than trying to blow up the whole world and throw huge fits, is I really just want to make sure that I'm following the rules. If they're asking me to contact the seller directly, that's fine. I may do that to set up a showing, but when I submit offers, I'm going to submit an offer to the agent, and then I'll copy the seller on it. If that was what if I was requested to put it directly to the seller, I'll instead send it to the agent and then copy the seller. Now, I might get an email back from the seller on that email and says, hey, I would take your offer if you changed 1, 2, and 3. I may make those changes and then resubmit the exact same way. I'm going to do the same thing with repairs. I'm going to do the same thing with walkthrough, anything like that. I'm going to copy the agent on. I'm going to show I was trying to bring the agent in all the time. But ultimately, I can't help it if this is the right house for my client and the listing agent doesn't show up, and I've got a seller that is ready to make a deal. So I think that's the best that I can do to really accommodate both sides. I know it's not perfect. It's just trying to get the deal done. All right, so that's limited services agent. But just know also that your BAC is protected in MLS with that if it is on the MLS sheet down at the bottom where it has normal BAC, because that limited service agent that's serving as the broker, they are still on the hook for it. Okay. Fixer-upper. So sometimes I'll have clients that are really super excited about finding a fixer-upper. Hey, sounds like fun to me. I have bought a fixer. In fact, actually, this house was a fixer-upper. It had 50 years of smoke, cigarette smoke inside, and a variety of paneling and all sorts of fun in here. And it was a fun project to do. However, what you've got to take into consideration when you're doing a fixer-upper are a couple of things. Number one is, where is the money going to come from for the repairs? And what is your timeline for the repairs? Are you planning on moving in and living through this? If we're trying to do a buy-sell and you're trying to move everything directly into this house and it is torn up or whatever, is that going to be doable? And then the funding side, where is the money coming from it? So some lenders have options where they can roll in what we call rehab money in with a purchase money loan. So a purchase money loan is that initial mortgage, and so they can roll in some rehab, but often it's not just as easy as, oh yeah, I want $20,000, right? They're going to have strings attached to that and rules related to what kind of contractor can draw that amount, how that will work. Totally fine if they want to go down that path. If they don't want to go down that path, and I will tell you what we did on this house is we lowered our down payment amount. So instead of putting 20% down, we put a lower amount down and then took that difference and used it for the rehab. Now, ultimately, I feel like end up with the same situation, right? It's money that's going into the house, it's creating equity. And so I end up with the same type of deal, but I've got to pay mortgage insurance now that I wasn't planning on paying. Again, just figure out what's right for the consumer. They have different ways. They could pay it just in cash. They could do something like a 401k loan. There are a lot of different ways to do it, but just know it's not so easy as just saying, oh, I'm going to roll that all in. Maybe, maybe not. Okay. And then also consider overall investment and if it's in line with the neighborhood. So if you have a client that is looking at buying a house for $200,000 and putting in $100,000 and thinking that house is going to be worth $300,000, but the whole neighborhood is more of a 250 type neighborhood, that may be a stretch and they may not get all the money that they're putting into that house back. It's okay potentially, right? Everybody has the right to make those decisions for themselves, but I just want to make sure that the client knows from the very beginning, hey, I think you're really overbuilding for this neighborhood by doing all that you want to do in there. Okay. All right, flips. So kind of the other side of fixer-upper is finding one that has already been fixed up. And these are very popular with buyers, but I often see the flippers really trying to get very tip-top dollar for it, and those can sometimes struggle from an appraisal perspective. There's also some flipping rules out there from an appraisal perspective that make the investor that owns the property have to disclose how much they did on the house and some things. So talk with your lender before you go under contract on a flip, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page with what appraisal requirements would be. Also, the buyer really needs to examine these houses because largely the flip market is totally unregulated. So, on the builder side, when somebody's building a house, they've got to file plans with the city, they've got to have code compliance, they've got to have some things. Well, I will tell you, a lot of flippers are just doing more cosmetic, and the rehab that they are doing, they are not necessarily pulling permits for. And so if a buyer is concerned about that, they may need to actually go more the fixer-upper route so that they have control over what providers did what in the house and have any warranties associated with that. All right, estate sales, relocation, bank-owned and short sales. So I kind of lumped all these together because you've got to think really from this perspective, it's a much less emotional situation. It is more of just getting the transaction done. There is definitely an impetus to sell the house. There is no chance that they're going to just pull the house off the market and continue living in it, right? Because there's nobody living in it. And there's often multiple decision makers that are involved at each step of this. You want to talk with the listing agent and just ask, hey, is title clear really with any of these? Do they have any sort of issues with title? Is there any sort of court approval that's needed? Is everything cool? Like how fast could we close on it? All you need to understand within all three of these categories is that there is likely deferred maintenance issues. I would say more so on the estate and the bank side. And that's because, so on an estate side, if somebody was in the property and elderly for a while, just things tend to get pushed to the backside as far as a maintenance perspective. And so even though it may look outdated, it's probably more than just looking outdated. It's actually probably also had some more maintenance related issues that might have gone by the wayside. Not always, but just something to be aware of. On bank owned, we often see that. So, they haven't had the HVAC serviced, maybe ever. They haven't had the roof looked at for hail damage. They haven't done some of those more big things that really needed to get done. And so it may be different than just going and buying a house. I will tell you too, bank-owned properties we're likely to see come as a bigger player in our 2021 market and beyond. And it's a totally different animal. So I would encourage you to find any trainings that you can related to that and learn more about it. Learn more about what it is going to be to represent buyers in that situation and to really do it well. I don't love bank-owned properties for what I call a retail buyer. So somebody who is buying a house to go and live in, I just don't love it for them. It's a tough process. The properties are usually fairly damaged. And to me, it's just a lot of risk for a family to carry. But again, it's not my decision. I'm not the one moving in there. And so if I have a client that wants that, I will help them get it. But it's just something that, you really need to know all the ins and outs so that you can best advise your client on that as well. All right, so I hope that helps. These are just some kind of weird scenarios, right? They're just a little different, and you just never know what you're going to walk into from a situation like this. But hopefully you are going to be able to really serve your client well and show them that you know how to real estate better. Thanks, guys.